Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. The craft fair is finished. I had every intention of bringing you all along with me, but things were just so busy. It was just go, 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 so I didn't have a chance to film there, but I will let you know how I did, what I sold. Now, the biggest thing, the most exciting thing, there is no way to express my joy of the fact that I sold the deer quilt. I can't believe it, and the sale itself was really wonderful. So what happened was, this woman came into the booth. She's an older woman, she had like a cane, and she was admiring the quilt, and she said, you know, this is a beautiful quilt, but she was talking about it in more of an artistic way. I asked if she quilted herself, and she said no, she was a visual artist who had her own booth, you know, up the way a little bit. But she was talking about, like, you know, the design aspects and the way the colors work together, and asked if, you know, I'd used a pattern or made it myself, and I told her that I didn't use a pattern. I just kind of did more of a improvisational method. She was just very impressed and using language that made me think she was like educated in the arts in some way. So she left, and my friend Mary Ellen, who I was doing the booth with, she was somewhere at that point, so she didn't hear the woman come and hear our conversation. But when she came back, I said, Mary Ellen, you'll never believe, you know, the compliments that this woman was giving me about my quilt. And I was telling her how, you know, wonderful I felt about it and everything. And so then, you know, like 15 minutes later, this guy comes into the booth and he's looking at the quilt, and he said, my mother was just here admiring your quilt. And he said, I don't personally have a lot of artistic ability, he said, but my brother does, and I'd like to buy the quilt for my brother. And I was just so shocked. I was literally like a deer in headlights. I was kind of confused. I didn't know if I like totally understood. He was very clear. It's not that I didn't hear him. He said, I want to buy your quilt. But I like didn't totally process it, because I didn't think there was any way I was going to sell that quilt. So I almost felt like this weird, you know, existential experience. And I was like, okay, and then I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh, okay, he wants to buy it. Like, what do I do now? And so then I was like, okay, well, let's take the quilt down. So we took the quilt down, and you know, Mary Ellen had her Square device to ring him up because he was using credit card, and that was good because she could focus on, you know, typing in the credit card numbers and stuff, because I was just like, so I just like explained more about the quilt to him. Then I told him I had a YouTube video on making the quilt, and so I had a little piece of paper that had, you know, the Mostly Quilts name on it, and I told him his brother could check it out if he wanted. So that might be kind of a cool thing, where if he, you know, receives the quilt as a gift, and then he can go see the making of the quilt. So it was just a great experience. And it's funny because I was thinking earlier in the day, I was like, you know, I would almost be happy if I didn't sell this quilt, because I don't know if I'm ready for it to go. I ended up not hanging up the Halloween quilt because I just felt that it would take away from the deer quilt. And I'm really glad I didn't hang up the Halloween quilt. I think that, you know, just having the deer quilt be on full display was definitely the way to go. But I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to sell the deer quilt. I do love it so much. And it's interesting because all of the other things I sell, people have asked me before, they're like, you make these things and then you sell them. Like, do you have any attachment? Do you feel, you know, sad when you sell them at all? And I'm always like, no, never. I never have any, you know, emotional attachment to these items, but the quilting feels totally different to me. So I do feel attached to all of these quilts, but I also realize, I guess I just don't understand when people have, you know, like 200 quilts that they've made. And I do understand that they want to keep them and that they love every single one of them, but there's no way that they're all like being out and used. And it's kind of sad to me that they're probably being stored somewhere. I guess you can switch them out seasonally and that kind of thing. But I'm so excited that this deer quilt is going to someone who I think is going to appreciate it. And the experience of the sale itself was such a positive one. It was just so crazy. I mean, he came and bought the quilt and he left. And as soon as he left, Mary Ellen and I just looked at each other and we just started laughing. It was like this like weird internal like binge of emotion. And Mary Ellen was so happy for me. And I was like, well, I can just go home now because I am like, you know, we stayed for the whole thing. Let me tell you the other things that I sold. None of them are as exciting as the deer quilt. But I did sell, and a couple of them, it's funny because even after I did the second video of getting prepared for the craft fair, I found more things that I forgot I had, so some of those items that I sold are those things. One of those items is a big blanket, not a quilt, just, you know, a piece of fabric on the front and a piece of fabric on the back, similar to the hot air balloon blanket and the bunny blanket, but it was bigger. It was like a full twin size blanket. And it was really soft on one side. So I sold that. I sold that for $37. I have it all written down here. I'm just gonna read down my list. I sold one of my crowns. I sold 8 bead jars. So those bead jars are a hit. Those I will continue to do forever because they are worth it for the seller. I feel that they are getting more than $2 worth of beads out of that little jar, but it's really not costing me anything because I have all of these beads that I'm not gonna use. I mean, I could make 1 billion of those little jars and still have beads. So, and they're easy. So that was great. I sold 8 of those, which at $2 a pop, that's 16 bucks right there. So that's exciting. Then I sold only 1 of the little bowls, which I don't know what to do about those little air dry clay bowls. I think they're really interesting. I have so many of them. I don't want to price them for any less. I think I'm just gonna keep selling them, and you know, even if it just sells like 1 bowl at a time, eventually they'll be gone. So I don't know, maybe y'all have advice about those bowls. You'd have to go back to the last video to see what I was talking about. I sold 2 wands and I did make 2 more. So if you remember, I had 2 wands and then I made 2 more wands off camera. And I think both of the new ones I made sold. I sold 1 pot holder, so I have 2 left. And I sold my first piece of jewelry. So I sold my first quilt and I sold my first piece of jewelry. So I sold a necklace and I sold a bracelet. So I'm really excited about that. I think the necklace was my lowest price necklace. It was $18. Most of the other necklaces were in like the high 20s, like $28. But this one was like a really long one. It's not one of the ones that I showed. It was like a long silver chain with like these purple little beads on it. I sold 4 hair clips. I made a bunch more hair clips after I did that other video. And I sold 1 of the hair clip sets. So if you remember, some of the hair clips were sets of 3, and so I sold 1 of those. And then I didn't write it down, I'm realizing. I know I sold at least 1 of the double hair clip sets, the little ones that were in the box. So I sold 1 of those. I sold 1 set of the baby booties, and I had meant to put tissue paper into the baby booties to kind of fluff them out and make them look a little nicer, and I didn't do that. So I feel like next time I think I'll sell more booties if I put a little tissue paper in there. And one of you viewers gave me a great idea for the tote bags, which was to stuff the tote bags with tissue paper. And I did that, and I think they looked much nicer hanging up, kind of all filled. You know, stores do that, so it makes sense. I didn't sell any of the tote bags. I priced them at $15, and I was saying to Mary Ellen, I was like, maybe I just need to price them lower. And she's like, no. She was like, I would think that you'd price them at like 30 bucks. And I was like, well, maybe if I price them higher, they would sell more. I mean, people are so weird with buying things. I think some people think like if they're priced too low that they're like, oh, it can't be that great. It's like all a mental game, right? And then I sold 2 of those taggy blankets. So that's it. That's what I sold. I made a total of $374. And this is my feeling about the craft fairs. I am so torn. I go back and forth. You know, this minute I'm like, this is my last craft fair. I'm never doing one again. It's too much work. It's some stress. It's a lot of, you know, planning. And then the next minute I'm like, no, this was so much fun. I had a great time with Mary Ellen. I sold my deer quilt. I just don't know. I kind of feel like, you know, if you take away the deer quilt at 200 bucks, then I made 174. And it's a $50, you know, sign up fee. So that's a big chunk of it out there. And it just seems like it is a ton of work. It's not only work making the stuff, because I'll continue to make the stuff. I'll continue to have it. I just need to find a way to offload it, to sell it. So it's a lot of work making the stuff, but then it's a lot of work like tagging it and packaging it all up. And, you know, buying little displays for the things cost money, and then it takes time to organize the displays, and then, you know, to drive out there an hour, set everything up, and then take everything down. It's exhausting. I spent yesterday pretty much just recovering. I was so tired. I was like, I don't want to do anything except sit on this couch. I was just mentally and physically exhausted. I mean, in terms of the mentality, it's a lot of social interaction, like constant social interaction with customers where you have to be really on and pleasant and happy and chatty, and that takes it out of me sometimes. So we'll see. There is a winter festival that I'll continue to do forever because you don't need to bring a tent or tables or anything like that. It's an indoor festival and they provide everything and you just bring your stuff. So that's a really easy one that I will keep doing, you know, for as long as they have that festival, I'll do it. But I think I need to really consider the outside craft festivals where you have to bring your own tent and your own tables. The weather is always iffy, you know, if it's raining, nobody's there and your stuff's getting all damp. I feel like I'm being kind of negative about the whole thing. I did have a great time, and part of what makes me want to keep doing it forever is the experience with Mary Ellen. We just have the best time together and we get excited for each other when we make sales, and then, you know, like the other festival that we did together where neither of us made anything. It's like kind of this running joke with us where we had a blast anyway, and then we went out for drinks afterwards. We didn't care that we didn't make anything. It was kind of funny. And so we just, you know, no matter what happens in these festivals, and it's always an adventure, something always crazy is happening, her and I are always just having a blast. So that alone, you know, makes it worth it. And the fact that, you know, I did make $374, that's not nothing. And I wouldn't have made that if I hadn't done the craft fair. So I don't know. I think I need some time to recuperate and think it through. But thanks so much for joining me. Oh, and now the other thing about the craft fair is that I kind of have to put everything else on hold. So all of these projects that I've been really excited about and working on and getting momentum on, like my Quilts of Valor, the Veterans Quilt, and, you know, my crumb quilting, and I have a couple other projects coming up that I'm really excited about. When I'm preparing for these craft fairs, like everything has to go on hold, and I'm just like dying to get back to that stuff. So subscribe so you don't miss anything, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye.